everyone, it's Meg, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some books I have read recently. This pile of books consists of the books that I read at the end of 2019 and the books that I've read so far in 2020, and there is a variety to talk to you guys about today. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I have 8 books to talk to you guys about today, which is more than usual, so I'm going to try and not babble on too much about them. But the first one that I have is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. If you don't know, I love Jane Austen. I love her stories and I've been slowly making my way through her books, and this is the 4th novel of hers I believe I have read. And I listened to this on audiobook as I did pick it up at the beginning of last year and I just wasn't in the mood for it, so I put it down. This is basically about our main protagonist called Catherine, and she goes on holiday to Bath and then she meets these siblings and she hears all these fairy tales, stories growing up and from reading books about haunted castles and abbeys, and they live in a place called Northanger Abbey, so she goes and stays with them. And it's one of those books that's meant to be like a really big Mickey take on society, and I thought that the majority of this book was going to take place in the Abbey, but it actually wasn't, which I was really surprised about. Maybe the last couple of chapters, I don't know, maybe the last half of the book was. Most of it takes place in Bath, and this book, I don't know whether it was because I enjoyed the audiobook, but I just didn't connect with the story as much as I thought I would. Jane Austen's other novels I've really enjoyed. I've watched the adaptations and I've read the books, and I haven't seen the adaptation for this yet, but I don't know what it was, but I just was not connected with the story, and I found quite a few of the characters rather annoying. I feel like that's sort of the point to a certain extent because it's such a Mickey take, but I just didn't connect with it, and I felt like I was kind of dragging myself through. And it's not a very long book at all, it's just over 200 pages, but the audiobook sounded like it was going on forever, even though I did enjoy the narrator. But I don't know, I don't have much more to say about it, to be honest with you. It just didn't click with me. It's my least favourite novel of Jane Austen's. Maybe when I eventually watch the adaptation I might like that a bit more. But yeah, kind of disappointed I didn't like it as much as her other novels that I have read so far. But hopefully, I've got Mansfield Park and Emma left to read, so hopefully I will enjoy those a bit more than I enjoyed this. So in the end, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have a book that I listened to on audiobook, and that is Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. And I have been curious about this book for ages. It's a duology. I'm currently listening to the second book, and I didn't know much about it apart from the fact that it was about this pirate called Alosa, and she permanently gets herself captured by an enemy ship so then she can steal something from them. And that's all I knew, and I ended up enjoying this way more than I thought I was going to. I loved the narrator for this. She was just amazing, and I love the characters. It's super angsty and a bit steamy, and I really enjoyed that. And it was just a book that was a lot of fun. It was just fun all around, and it was just such a surprise because I didn't really know much about it apart from what I told you before. And it was just a book that I loved, and I love our main character Alosa. She's so spunky and cocky, and she isn't afraid to tell people how it is. She is a badass female pirate, and I absolutely love that about her. So yes, it is a book that I have definitely been enjoying. It's been a lot of fun, and definitely recommend if you are looking for a fun, steamy, angsty, action-packed read. So I gave Daughter of the Pirate King 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I have a book that also really surprised me, and that is The Places I've Cried in Public by Holly Bourne. I read this for a 24-hour readathon hosted by Kira from Kira's Corner and Em from A Little Writer M, and I didn't finish it during the readathon because if you watch that video, you know that I failed quite miserably. But I still carried on reading this book, and it surprised me way more than I thought it was going to. This is a book that's basically about toxic relationships and also abusive relationships, and it's about our main character. She's called, I don't know if it's Emile or Emily, one or the other, and basically she's moved to a new town down south because she's a northerner, and she doesn't know anybody, and then she meets this boy called Reese and they start a relationship rather quickly. This book is told in past and present, so it is told, half of it is told in the present, where after Emile or Emily has she is broken up with Reese, they are no longer together, and she is looking back and reflecting on the relationship, and the other parts of the book are during the relationship, kind of how it started, and it's basically looking back and she's putting the pieces together that maybe the relationship that she thought she was a really big part of and that she loved maybe wasn't as healthy and as she thought. And it's really interesting. I've never read a book dealing with a toxic or abusive relationships before, so it was a really new concept for me to read about, and it's very hard hitting and hard to read sometimes. It has you tugging at your heartstrings, and it was just a very intriguing and thought-provoking read, and also one that I feel like is very important, as I know Holly deals with a lot of important subjects in her books, such as obviously toxic relationships and mental health and feminism and all that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed this book so much more than I thought I was going to, and I'm really glad because I really want to get into more of Holly's work. This is only the second book I've read by her, and if it is anything to go by, I'm sure I'm going to enjoy the rest of her novels. So yes, I really enjoyed this book, and I had to give it 5 out of 5 stars, and 100% recommend it if you are looking for a book with maybe more serious topic discussion or just some more YA books in general. It is just fab. Next up, I have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is a book that a lot of people love, and then also a book that a lot of people don't really like. And I was really intrigued because I was trying to figure out if this book was fantasy or if it was magical realism, and I feel like it's kind of historical fiction, magical realism. I feel like that's kind of the vibe I got from this book. And this book is basically about a circus and 2 magicians who don't know they're in competition with each other. That's what I was told. That's all I ever got when I first was hearing about this book, and I was intrigued because people said how lovely the writing was. So I picked it up, and it took me longer to read than I thought I did, but I did enjoy it. But I feel like I understand why quite a few people do not like this book. I don't feel like there is much of a plot in this book. It's very character driven. I feel like it is basically a description of the circus. This entire book, it's a description of the circus and its evolution, and there's not really much like action or much plot, like I said before, and technically there's nothing wrong with that. But that is a reason why I see people don't really enjoy it. But as somebody who appreciates lovely writing and descriptions, I did enjoy the aspect of that, and I didn't mind the factor that it didn't really have a plot. I feel like you are watching these characters grow up and evolve, and watching the circus evolve, and I love hearing about all the different tents and the intricacy of the circus. I really enjoyed that. There were some bits that I loved more than others. There were some characters I loved more than others because there are a lot of characters, and I must admit wasn't 100% satisfied with the ending. I feel like maybe the last 50 pages or 100 pages, however, towards the end there was kind of a bit of drama, a bit of something that happened, and then it kind of got resolved really quickly, and it was just kind of like, seriously? But overall, I did really enjoy it, and I would like to pick up the Starless Sea up at some point. I haven't heard many things, but I have heard good things from what I have heard about it so far. So overall, I gave The Night Circus 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have a festive read, and that is One Day in December by Josie Silver. I saw this book being sold in Waterstones back in November, and it seemed like such a cute, fun, Christmassy read, so I knew I had to pick it up, so I got myself a second-hand copy, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. This book is basically about two characters called Laurie and Jack, and it is basically set over a 10-year span, I think. So it's one of those stories where kind of the two stories intertwine and it kind of goes on throughout the years, and this basically starts off with Laurie on a bus and Jack, and at this point her and Jack are total strangers, and she spots Jack at a bus stop, and this is during Christmas, and they make eye contact and she believes that this is love at first sight, and the story goes on from there. And I thought this was going to be a really cute, fun, fluffy read, which it was, but it was a lot more hard-hitting than I thought it was going to be, and I also related to the story far much more than I thought I would as well. Obviously, this is set when Laurie is around 21, 22 when this book finishes, and they're around 29, 30 by the time the book ends. So obviously you see them evolve from when they've just graduated university and trying to make their way in the world, and Laurie was a character I could really relate to in that aspect. Laurie seems to struggle a lot in terms of her career throughout this entire book, about trying to find her place in the world, as she wants to be like a magazine journalist, and she's really struggling to find a job that she wants or find a place where she can really move forward with her life and get what she wants. And I could really relate to her in that factor, as obviously, especially in the beginning of the book and the first couple of years, I felt like that was a main aspect that I could relate to with this book. Laurie was one of my favourite characters. I really enjoyed Jack as well. They are both very imperfect but really wonderful characters at the same time, which I love them for. And I also love the friendships in this book and the family, and there's also a lot more kind of family dynamics that happen as well. And it's just such a wonderful book. It's not as festive as you think it is, even though it's called One Day in December, as obviously the book starts during Christmas, but a lot of the book carries on when it is not Christmas throughout the entirety of the next 10 years. But I love seeing how much the characters develop over the years, and it's just such a fun, much more hard-hitting than you think book. But it's also so much fun. I'm so glad that I finally got to read it, and it's also a very funny book. Like, I love the British humour in all of these, like, British contemporary novels. It's just fab. One of my favourite things, I'm sure you guys know. But yes, really, really enjoyed this book, so I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I have a poetry collection, which is Poems to Fall in Love With by Chris Riddell, and I mentioned one of his poetry collections in my last recent read video. This is the second one that he's done, which obviously he has chosen some poems and done illustrations to go with them. Again, stunning cover, and I really enjoyed this book. Again, I don't really have many different views on this to the other one, to be honest with you. There are some super cute illustrations and lovely poems. There is one poem in here by Neil Gaiman which I love especially, and it's just a really fun read. Definitely recommend if you are looking to pick up a new poetry collection. And also, like I said in the last one, having the poems and illustrations makes the whole experience of reading this book a lot more engaging. So really enjoyed it, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I have The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a book I've heard a bit about. I know Jesse the reader has talked about it a bit and he really enjoyed it. And I was curious because it seems like a story that I would be interested in, so I found a second-hand copy in a charity shop a few months ago, and I read it fairly recently. It was the first book that I completed of 2020, and it was a very enjoyable read. This was obviously, like I said, a book I thought I'd really enjoy, but I don't feel like I ended up enjoying it as much as I thought I would. I really enjoyed the characters, and obviously the fact that it is a book about books and a story about stories. And I love the dynamics between like the family and the friends and everything in this book. But I just personally, for some reason, I didn't find anything special about it. This is basically a book about a grumpy man named A.J. Thickery who owns a bookshop, and then one day a toddler is left in his bookshop to be left in his care, and the story happens from there. And I feel like it's quite a gentle book. Like, even though some serious stuff happens and it's not the happiest of endings, I still feel like it's quite gentle. Like, the way it's been written, it's just gives off that sort of vibe. And I did enjoy the writing and I enjoyed the characters, but like I said, for some reason I just didn't find anything special or anything personally remarkable about it. But it was a book that I enjoyed very much, and I can see why so many people enjoy it, as obviously it's a book about books and we love books about books. So yes, I did enjoy it, even though I for some reason didn't find it extremely remarkable, but I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because I still really enjoyed it. And the last book I have on this list is one that I just finished last night, and that is Diary of a Confused Feminist by Kate Weston. This is an arc which I was so lucky to receive from a book subscription box from BookBox Club's December box, and I didn't know much about this book. This is one of their most anticipated releases of the year. It comes out in February, and this is basically, the way that I would describe it is Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging meets Miranda. Like, if that's not enough to tempt you to read this book, then personally I don't know what is. So this book is basically about a 15-year-old girl named Kat, and she has decided that she wants to be a feminist, and it is about her throughout the first half of her year 11, and it is about feminism and about mental health, and this book was just so much more than I thought it was going to be. This book, first off, is incredibly funny. I love the humour in here. There's just so much mickey taking and so many laughs and so much banter, which I love. And I feel like the humour is definitely throughout the whole of the book, but I feel like the most laugh out moments are definitely towards the beginning of it. And this kind of gives me Eliza and the Monsters vibes, because the first half of this book is quite cute and fluffy and kind of your typical teenage drama, but obviously still discusses important topics such as feminism and what it means to be a feminist and what it means to be a woman, and kind of all the pressures that you have as a teenager, especially in the modern age, dealing with social media and bloggers and influencers and kind of thinking, oh, I need to be perfect, and also body image as well is a big thing. But the last 100 pages of this book really pack a punch. I feel like that was where I feel like I could really relate to Kat, as dealing with the mental health and also kind of going through the process of therapy. I found that very accurate and a very honest portrayal as somebody who also suffers from anxiety and has gone through the process of like going to a doctor and going to therapy. I personally did find that very accurate and honest. And I also love the family and friendship dynamics in this book. I love how supportive Kat's parents are of her, and also her friends especially. They are just the most wonderful, precious friendship group ever, and I really love that. They were just like super best friends, and I love kind of seeing them with their banter between each other and how close they are. I really enjoyed that. And like I said, I feel like this is a very important book. I feel like it's a book that my high school self would have really related to. Like I said, there's so many topics of discussion throughout this book, like I said, like feminism, what it means to be a woman, body image, identity, kind of figuring out what you want to do with your life. It also kind of touches on bullying a bit, which is something that I've also personally experienced, mental health. It just talks about so much, and I feel like this is a very important book that I feel like it should be a book that is put in schools for teenage girls to read about, because I feel like they would be able to identify themselves a lot in this book, and I'm so glad that I got to read it and I got an arc of it, because it has probably become one of my favourite books of the year so far, and I'm really happy that I got to read it. So I 100% recommend reading this book when it comes out in February. I think it's like the 4th or the 6th of February, something along those lines. 100% recommending you read it when it comes out. So obviously I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. So there you have it, guys. Those are some of the books that I have read recently. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on these books, And I would love to know if you have read any of these books and your thoughts on them in the comments down below. As always, I would love to know, and also what are some of the books that you have been reading recently. Like I said, I would love to know as always, and we can talk a discussion about how much we like these books, or maybe it's a book that we want to read. If you like this video, then please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more bookish videos from me, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you'll be noted every time I post a new video. As always, I will leave the links to my social media along with the links to my Goodreads in the description down below for you guys. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!